Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Vega Insights. I'm Luke Bideaux, President and CEO of Vega Imaging Informatics. With us today is Christopher Ferguson. Chris is our Manager of Imaging Data Services here at Vega. Chris is a certified imaging informatics professional with over a decade of experience in medical imaging. So we're excited to have Chris here today. And today we want to kind of highlight some of the big accomplishments that Vega has had over the years. We've been in business since 2018. We've really accomplished some great things. There's still a lot of problems to solve. Um, but I think many out there may not be aware of, what we do and what makes us different. So, um, some of the accomplishments that I'd like to highlight is that, I counted up all of the projects that we've done over the years for data curation, and we've actually done over 100 projects for, you know, um, AI developers and researchers all around the world for multiple different imaging specialties. When you break that down by images, we've actually processed and delivered hundreds of millions of de-identified medical images. So it's really amazing. And we partnered with companies across 20 countries across 6 continents, so it truly is a global business that we're in. Our company is still privately owned and managed, and so we're proud of that, being able to um, control the company and make the decisions ourselves on what we believe to be most important, and um, be able to just offer the least amount of overhead and best amount of value to our clients. We've just helped so many AI developers get the data they need to achieve their regulatory approvals, demonstrate the utility of their solutions, and in some cases, help those AI developers execute multi-million dollar exits. And we've helped generate millions of dollars for imaging facilities all around the world, um, practices large and small. Um, receive that revenue and be able to reinvest that in their practices and do great things. So we're really proud of all the success that we've had so far. Um, and we just want to really highlight what makes us different, and then get into some of the projects that we've done, and be able to share some of our experiences for the community. So, Chris, when we think about what sets Vega apart, what comes to mind, front of mind for you?
I would say the number one thing would be our expertise. We're definitely a unique blend of having clinical research backgrounds. We all have our SIPs, our Certified Imaging Informatics Professional credentials. Um, that combined has been largely accredited to a lot of our success, just because we're able to see the project from so many different angles that not everyone else is able to see. With that, we've been able to use the best tools, and we work with the all the experts associated with those different softwares and tools, and we've modified things to fit very unique scenarios. So, in that, with our background and our expertise, we're able to really dive in and use the most efficient tools for very specific projects. Um, and that collectively has really shown a proven history of success. Um, Outside of our expertise, another thing that kind of makes us unique is going the extra mile for clients, and building a great rapport, because that's really foundational to us and to what we do. Many of our clients actually are returning clients, where we've built great relationships with them over many years, and they return for additional projects. And I feel like, aside from the fact that we do go above and beyond for our clients, also because of the expertise that we have, we're able to really ask questions and understand things at a level that they're maybe not used to with other companies.
Yeah, I could definitely echo that. And you've got you've got your background, that really you have advanced imaging expertise like CT and MRI, but also you have expertise in pathology and the lab, which has been helpful for us. My expertise is really, on the imaging informatics side, the plumbing and, working with all of the facilities to make sure we've got, DICOM connections or whatever challenges we hit with the information systems. We have, other we have radiologists that we consult with on some of these data requests and just expertise across the board that, without that, I could definitely see a lot of these projects going sideways. Maybe there are some AI developers that have experienced that where the third party companies or maybe sometimes directly the facilities they're trying to work with to get the data, they don't really understand um, what's being requested, and sometimes it probably doesn't even show its face until halfway through the problem or through the project when they start to realize that this data provider has got no idea what they're doing, or these surprises happen that pretty much make it clear that they don't have the expertise that you know is needed for the job. So um, I agree with you that the expertise is probably the number one thing that we hang our hat on here, and you know gives our customers the confidence to work with us again and again. Another thing I'd like to highlight, a differentiator, is value. I consider myself a very frugal person, and it doesn't matter if I'm looking for a plumber for our house or looking for an IT partner. I'm looking for value. I want the highest level of service at the lowest possible price. And the thing I look for now when I'm looking for contractors is, who am I going to be working with here? Um, there are some large corporations where you talk to somebody in sales, and then um, you might get started with somebody else that's mid-level, but then there's a lot of lower level people doing the work, and does it come out the way the upper level people explained it? And the sweet spot that I like to find is, can I find a contractor where you know in the early stage I can talk with somebody that knows what they're talking about, and those are the people actually doing the project and doing the most important work in the project, and they can bring in assistants and people to help them with some of the lower level work, but having that intimate oversight on the project with people with the high level of expertise, it really goes a long way. And I think that's sort of where we fit, um, working with us. Probably going to be working with either me or Chris during some of the discovery conversations. We've got Al on the sales side, who's also very knowledgeable, but we just have a lot of expertise in there, providing that high quality of service. And then, without having all of the layers of overhead that can drive up the price. If you got to pay your investors, and then you got to pay your, you know, people with ownership stakes and everything in the company, then that's why the prices are often inflated with some of these. But with us, we're a privately owned company, and we keep our costs low, and we can pass that savings on to our clients. So I guess we've hit on our expertise and our value, Chris. Does anything else really stand out to you?
Yeah, I guess I would like to add, another thing that really helps us to stand out is that we take a lot of pride in getting the job done right. You're only as good as the data you have. It's got to be of high quality. Otherwise, the outcome is not going to be maybe accurate, let's say. But with that and getting the job done correct, I mean, that really starts prior to even contractual execution, in terms of us helping clients to plan projects. Maybe they have an idea, but they're not exactly they don't exactly know what they want to choose in terms of finite details, or it's kind of a rough plan. So often we'll help with plans in terms of groups, specific imaging parameters, things along those lines. And with that, we offer complimentary discovery. So if a client ever reaches out to us and has a request for whatever it may be, images, we'll go in and we'll see how feasible that data request is and what we have, and that's all complimentary to our clients. And we also really like to focus in on getting a very detailed SOW, because with that, that's going to list everything that really the client needs to execute this project. Um, and it's just we've learned from the very beginning it's best to be as detailed as possible, so that everybody understands exactly what is going to be received, and that we iron out all those details ahead of time, just so we eliminate any obstacles in the long run. So we really take pride in that, and we do our due diligence. Um,
Yeah.
and when it
Yeah,
comes to
sometimes it could take a little longer in the sales phase, right? Because we're doing all this deep dive into the discovery and, um, in the end, though, you know, it all works out because the project goes a lot smoother, and there's just no point in starting a project if you're uncertain about the outcome, right? And so, um,
Absolutely.
that's
Yes,
always been our model with that, yeah.
yeah, we've learned from past projects very quickly that that is the way to move forward. It does take a little bit more time, and again, it's complementary. Um, in terms of the success and the execution, it's unmatched. We're also getting the job done right. Also includes problem solving. We're very
Mhm.
good at problem solving. Not every problem's always the same, but we've seen so many different cases across the board, with so many different variables involved, that we've gotten really, really, really good at problem solving, in terms of, things that issues the client may have, or otherwise. And we also take a lot of pride in that too, because that's a way to show that we're dedicated to our clients.
Right. Yeah, so let's talk about some projects here and highlight some things that we've done. And I want to start with the most popular project that we've been sharing with the community is our foundation model level DBT data set, over 1 million breast tomosynthesis studies delivered. That project certainly had its challenges. Chris, let's talk a little bit about that project. If you could share some of the experiences.
Yeah, that was a very large project, with which presents its own unique challenges. I mean, obviously, the size of the project kind of can sway things in terms of challenges. So that was a major project. It was a massive project, millions of patients, and we learned a lot from that. We were able to uh, improve all of our tools to make things a little bit more automated, and so that we felt that the validation process was accurate and done well, because we were able to really work out some kinks with automation and to get things going a lot quicker. And so with that, with so many images that you're working with and all the information in the DICOM headers, it's quite an ordeal to do the de-identification of all that, to make sure that everything is nice and neat, everything's been appropriately processed. And the foundation project certainly gave us a boost in confidence, because it was executed very well. All the de-identification strategies that we used previously, they all matched and worked and led to the project's success. Additionally, again, we were able to really kind of like refine those tools to automate them to accept significantly larger volumes, specific to this project. So um,
Yeah.
it's really impacted our timeline in terms of being able to get projects out, I would say.
Yeah, you mentioned a confidence boost. I think, it's the thing that was different about this is the size of each study, right? A million studies is impressive, but the fact that they were breast tomosynthesis studies is even more impressive. And, when you look at the size of a breast tomosynthesis study compared to, let's say, a chest X-ray, you could be looking at 20 times larger file size of a study there. Depending on the number of views in the chest X-ray and a lot of different factors. Since you could say this project was, let's say, 20 times larger than 1 million chest X-rays, then that means we ought to be able to do a 20 million chest X-ray project in about the same amount of time, roughly. And that's sort of the scale that we need to be working in, between like 1 to 10 million studies for these foundation model data sets that are being developed right now. We've got requests from some right now, and we know for a fact we can do them because we've actually done it. And I think there's other companies and health systems out there, they might have access to that level of data, but they're definitely not proven in doing something like this. And so it's a confidence boost for us. It gives our clients more confidence in us that we actually can pull something like that off. So, um, yeah, it's a good one. Another project that comes to mind, um, we've done many of these types of projects, but projects that require a significant amount of demographic diversity. We're not going to name any customers or projects specifically, but we recently completed one that was one of the most complex um, projects that I've seen due to the different specific distributions that were required, um, and especially when it came to like race and ethnicity, that really hard to find populations of patients. So tell me a little bit more about those types of projects and some of the challenges that we face there.
Yeah, it's really important that the demographics of, if you're doing a US based project, that those are represented in the models. Otherwise, the outcome of your algorithm may be inefficient and skewed. So we've had a lot of projects that have specific demographic required specific demographic representation, and that certainly can be a challenge because, as you know, it's not mandatory for patients in the U.S. to disclose race and ethnicity. So with that, you really have to pull from the SIP side of your brain and be able to pull from multiple disparate systems, so you can collect race and ethnicity because it may be in one place and not another. It may be in the wrist, the MR. It could be anywhere essentially, and more and more so. That's a requirement to have that information, or at least to have a portion of your sample size for that to be reflected. Um, and with that, and the fact that it's not required to release race and ethnicity as a patient, so it's not always recorded. You really need to start from a huge amount of data and then kind of filter down to the ones that have the representation that the project requires. So um, it may be small numbers that you require, but really that starts from a huge, it starts with a huge number in the very beginning, a large volume. So.
Yeah. And I think that's another advantage of working with Vega as opposed to, let's say, one particular institution. They may be predominantly white, or maybe they have a Hispanic you know presence in that area. But working with Vega, you're going to get access to a distribution across the country. We can pull in sites from areas that have a larger Asian population, a larger African American, and get the diversity that you need for you know meeting the FDA's requirements, or just for your internal goals to be able to represent the
Absolutely. That's just so important for the outcome of a project. I mean, you have to, it's not only representation with the race and ethnicity, but as you said, geographically, if you're doing a US project, it's got to span multiple areas within the US to truly have a positive impact in terms of nationwide success. In addition to that, age, sex, all those things are very important to include and to represent
Hmm.
because the more studies that are released, the more it shows that those kind of minority situations are unaccounted for, and they're important to include in the overall projects for the success. Because ultimately, you want to impact as many people as possible.
Yeah. And even just different practices do things differently. The radiologist reports are different, protocols are different. And so bringing in more diversity in your data, could be a good thing and can be the difference between your solution working in the real world versus, just only working on a very small subset of data or wherever it was trained on, And so if you're trying to grow your adoption across the country or across the world, getting representation from a diverse set of sources, is one of the most important things. And the most efficient way to get that type of data is to work with a centralized data provider like Vega, where we've already gone through all the rigmarole of getting the contracting in place, getting our data processing servers through the security requirements and implemented and integrated and all that stuff. So um, it's important that AI developers and researchers be aware that they have, us and other data providers as an option to turn to get that diversity in data.
Absolutely.
I think, another thing to highlight is we've helped so many AI developers get their regulatory approvals, especially FDA, with US being our primary source of data. Um, And we've helped a lot of international AI developers that don't really have much of a US presence yet get their FDA approval. So, Chris, tell me a little bit about, the challenges that we face when we're doing these types of regulatory types of data.
Well, we've kind of already touched on the fact that diversity and distributions really need to be accounted for. But overall, I would say what the FDA is requiring in most instances is very specific. Um, so you really need to adhere to, what they're requesting of the AI company in order to successfully meet the needs of the FDA submission and approval and everything like that. We've had a lot of success in terms of helping clients get FDA approval, as you've mentioned. And it just lends itself to the level of expertise that we have. We're able to really kind of tunnel down into specifically what they need and or to find it and meet those standards consistently. And with that, more and more, you really need the ground truth data, and that's mostly going to be in the way of pathology outcomes and things like that. And as you mentioned, every facility is a little bit different in terms of their pathology process. If it's a big hospital, maybe they do pathology in-house, some send it out. With that, there's just such a wide array in what those pathology outcome reports look like. And so we're really able to, we've been, we've been really successful in terms of being able to navigate that and understand kind of all the intricacies when it comes to how different facilities interpret and their outputs for pathology reports. With that, which is even more difficult, is a lot of times they need longitudinal cases, and that is just another layer of difficulty because we really have to follow that patient through the clinical process and make sure that we have all of the outcomes represented so their clients can understand exactly what's going on at multiple time points. And for them, they need that to validate anything that they want to do to make sure that the diagnosis, the times, the prognosis, those things all align with what they're seeing in their algorithm. So very important, difficult to execute, but again, we've had a ton of success and we continue to get better in these ways.
Yeah, I think you touched on pathology outcomes. There are many data providers out there where that's going to take them out of the game right there. If there's requirements to do more than just radiology images and reports, then they're out of contention for that one. Um, we specialize in multimodal data sets, but it's not just for cancer-related things with pathology outcomes. Many times there are longitudinal, follow-up radiology reports that can sort of assist in the ground truthing. We've also partnered with a lot of radiologist reviewers and providers that do the ground truthing. They can do segmentations, annotations, multiple layers of review, and um, so we can do kind of the end to end on these regulatory requests. If you need, the imaging data, but you also need ground truthing information, and you need providers to help um, confirm these cases and segment things. We can help with whatever those needs are, and so that's definitely an important thing to know about what we're able to help with. Let's talk a little bit about specialty data, multi-specialty types of data beyond radiology, because we've got some success in that area, and I think some of these other specialties outside of radiology can really be challenging for AI developers. So tell us a little bit, Chris, about some of the other specialties we've worked in outside of radiology.
Well, because typically cardiology is a separate specialty, it's not always included in the umbrella. It's included in the umbrella of radiology, but it's often separate. So, if we consider cardiology data, um, that has its own unique challenges with its own specialty. You've got multi-frame cines and echocardiograms that can uh, cause issues in terms of making sure that everything is de-identified appropriate, everything is there. Um, every frame is present. Um, Also, with that, with cardiology and generally speaking, it's not all the time that certain modalities the data is backed up and saved. At least not in the way that CT and MR be. And that could be with fluoroscopy and things of that nature. Interventional procedures involve the cardiology, where it takes a lot of work to acquire such data. So that's a unique challenge. Also, ophthalmology that presents a ton of its own issues in terms of data type. Um, Various information systems are involved. Doing the discovery process, I think, is uniquely difficult in terms of finding exactly what the client may be looking for, just because um, it's not organized in the same manner that your typical PACS system is organized in. You have to deal with a lot of the. Uh, it really pulls from the SIP side of things. You really have to be intelligent in terms of the informatics aspects of it. Again, in terms of the type of file and the size of file and everything else like that. Additionally, we've been working on pathology reports, and that again has many unique challenges. Some clients may be interested in the entire slide. Then you have logistical issues. With pathology and microscopy, the client can be requesting fluorescent imaging. There are so many different types of stainings involved. In terms of magnification, it's not also as organized as well as, DICOM images are in packs. So you have that issue. There are size components. There are certainly file type aspects that are challenging. So you really need to know in all three of those areas, cardiology, ophthalmology, and pathology, you really have to have some level of expertise within those fields to be able to work with a client who's requesting
Yeah.
such data. So, and we have that.
Absolutely. I'm grateful for your expertise in that area in pathology. I'll look at some of these pathology reports and I'll be like, oh, I don't understand some of this, but we have the expertise on the team that does specialize in that. And without it, you can really make a lot of mistakes with any kind of multimodal data, or if it's just strictly digital pathology. I see digital pathology as sort of the next frontier for imaging informatics. There's a lot happening at SIM, for instance, and partnering with the DPA and including pathology as part of imaging, and pathology informaticists being included in the imaging informatics community. But the promise that I see with AI being able to do so much more for drug discovery and research in the field of pathology. If we can ever get to a fully digital pathology environment in the US, especially, and seem to be lagging behind some of the rest of the world in that area. I think just in general, imaging informaticists need to be broadening their horizons on digital pathology. And I found it interesting that SIM is offering a bridge pass this year. So shout out to the DPA and SIM on offering a pathway for imaging informaticists to learn about both pathology and all imaging informatics by attending both of those conferences. But um, there's clearly a push towards digital pathology, better standardization using the DICOM standard in pathology. And so I think there'll be, continued growth in AI for digital pathology. And, with that requires curators to have expertise in both areas and be able to work at that level. So we're proud to be able to work at that level and continue to grow in that area. And you mentioned cardiology as well. That one is another one where there's certainly a lot of challenges, unique challenges that I think can be underestimated. For instance, when we do an echocardiogram data project, we know what we're getting into. We've done it before. We know there's going to be different photometric interpretation settings. There's going to be different
Impression.
compression. Yeah, and if you're not careful with that stuff, you can really mess up the images. And so um, it's it's just important that we work with an organization that's got the expertise so that you can avoid all of those issues right out of the gate. So yeah, I appreciate you kind of highlighting, Chris, some of the different types of projects that we're proud to have experience in. And I think with that, we could just kind of close by saying that we've helped so many AI developers in imaging practices, but we're just getting started. We're looking to grow. Yeah, I think there's still so many imaging practices out there that have their data bottled up, and could be because they don't have the pathways in place yet to contractually get into arrangements where the data can be used for subsequent purposes. Could be a lot of reasons, technical reasons or political reasons, but um, we've got a laundry list of data requests that can't be fulfilled until we get more sources and start unlocking some of that data. And so the opportunities are there, the revenue's there. And most importantly, if we want to see more advancements in medical imaging AI, we have to start unlocking all of this data that's bottled up. And, it's preventing the development of some of these solutions. And so, just to kind of reiterate the value proposition that I feel that we provide for AI developers, sort of that sweet spot where um, we have the experience to handle all of these complex types of projects and projects at great scale. Um, but yet we're small enough to be able to keep our overhead low and run an efficient operation, and have some confidence that the project's going to get done correctly. And I think for the imaging practices out there, it's important that they understand we are flexible. We understand that every organization has a unique set of policies and procedures, IT security constraints, and our way of doing things is flexible. And so we're excited to talk to more hospitals and imaging practices out there that would just want to have a discussion about what it would look like to partner with us and help um, monetize the data assets that they have and contribute to the important innovation that's happening in medical imaging AI. So we're excited to talk to both sides, the developers and the imaging providers, and we look forward to continued success. So thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.